Well, the CEO of the Melbourne Football Club, Gary Pert,
Yes,
has wandered into the ABC commentary box here.
to provide a bit of balance.
Indeed. Hello,
Gary.
Gary. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys.
What are the worst conditions you've ever played in? We're just on the SMS today. People are telling us what are the worst conditions they've watched football in. Can you think of the worst conditions you ever played in?
All right, so I think most listeners will think I'm making this up, but I can remember playing in a game at Princes Park when Fitzroy were playing their games at Princes Park, and there was so much mud on the ground. There literally was no grass on the ground, and the ball was coated in mud, and every kick, like a good kick, would be 15, 20 metres, and it would hit the mud and just plug in it, and it was just a debacle of a game.
Can you remember who you played on?
I can't remember who we were playing. I just remember it was just a complete waste of time. And modern day players now wouldn't even think of the fact that we ever played in mud. This was just caked in mud.
They don't play in mud. They play in wet, slippery. The ball skids, but they don't have mud anywhere.
Yeah, and I remember it was probably 4 or 5 years ago when Collingwood were playing in Brisbane, and they'd actually had a couple of games beforehand, and there was actually mud in the middle of the ground, and the players literally didn't know what to do about it because they were all slipping over. They had actually mud on their clothes, which threw them a bit. There was mud on the footy that freaked them out. It was
What
just
is
something
this ground stuff?
that literally. But you talk. I don't want to sound like an old dinosaur, but. You played in the mud every single week.
Yeah.
And it was the only 2 games to start the year looked like this, and then it just turned into mud.
And Gary, it was always a bad look, wasn't it, when one of your teammates had not a speck of mud on them at the end of the game? You thought, oh, someone's played a very wide game here.
That was a bit of an indictment. And you look, again, as a full-back, the fact that the whole goal square was mud when you're playing on Lockett and Dunstall, that was your biggest friend. I would hate to have to play on the grass here.
I have a vague recollection, Gary, that you, for the Roys at least, you might have worn the long sleeves every now and then.
Well, I did wear the long sleeves, and that was a tip given to me. No, it's really important. That was nothing to do with warmth.
Start.
Laurie Serafini, who was my mentor, he was the fullback before me, and when I went to fullback, he taught me that the long sleeves, like when you're at fullback and you're taking a chest mark or you just cannot make a mistake, the long sleeve jumper meant that you made less mistakes when you were taking the ball in your arms. And I got used to it, and I agree with that, because when it gets wet and slippery, everyone's dropping it. So Laurie Serafini was the one that gave me that tip.
Out in the middle, when we arrived here today, they had covers out like a game of cricket was about to happen out here. Is this a request that is put in, or is that just the groundskeepers doing their own work?
I reckon that we could put out any request we wanted to, and the groundkeepers would do whatever they want. Let's face it, they are the bosses, so they do what they want.
It would be completely ignored. Well, let's move on to the Melbourne Football Club. At Collingwood, you oversaw 3 grand finals, 1 flag. You've been with the D's for this year now. In your view, how would you summarise the year?
Well, it's obviously been a really disappointing year. High expectations, and to be sitting 17th is something that the players and the whole club is so disappointed and embarrassed about. And it sits. The question that everyone asks is to go, how do you get to that point? And I always talk about what is the best version of the club. Like, we're a young team. We really need to have the momentum as we come into the competition. We don't have the depth of some of the more mature teams that are sitting in the top 4 at the moment. So that whole off-season and pre-season is so important. To have had 15 operations to key players, including the majority of our leadership group, major operations, and 11 of those players not to be doing anything before Christmas is not ideal. And then to actually have our captains and many of our top players not even right to start the season, or to have played 1 practice game by the time they start, was not the ideal way we started this season. And then to have had other injuries, and injuries are not an excuse, because we've seen other clubs have injuries this year, the Richmonds and the Collingwoods and West Coast. And if you got the depth and mature depth, you can replace those players and keep the momentum going. I think one of the things that have been shown this year is we don't have that mature depth and haven't been able to cover those injuries well.
Your pressure ranking has dropped from 3rd to 16th. Now, that exists. That's completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Of injuries. So that's about effort.
Well, it is to a point, but I think it's also got a bit to do with the new rules of the 666. And I think everyone would look at that and go, the 6-6 rules, which have been great for the game, have benefited some clubs and made it difficult for ourselves or to other clubs, and I think we're one of them. That's not an excuse. It's just when we were playing our best footy last year, it was a very in-tight, competitive way of playing the footy, lots of little handballs and keep it going. It wasn't the open running game, and some teams have got the athletes to do that. We're not as well set up for it, and there's no doubt if you talk to any other coaches as they come in to chat, they'll say that they're dividing us and pulling us apart so that they're not caught up in an arm wrestle and they're turning it into a leg race.
Did you anticipate that was going to be a factor, like coming into the series?
Yeah, we could see that's how it's going to play out. But like I said, there's an element of when you recruit, so we go and get a Colin Jasny to play on the outside. So he's going to be our elite runner up and down the wing. And as we know, because of his concussions, he's barely played. Vandenberg, who we love and has just been, such a great runner and competitive driver of up and down the wing, he doesn't play one game this year. So when we looked at how the game would roll out and the players that we had set in those positions, Josh Hunt, who's the quickest player on our list, again, that was going to be playing up and down in the midfield because of these new rules. When we lost our forwards, people will see we had Josh Hunt leading out of full forward because he was the only one at the start of the year kicking.
You traded one of your forwards, though.
We did.
Traded Jesse Hogan.
Yeah, that's right. And that was a conscious decision, which we've all been through before, and some people agree and don't agree, but that allowed us to bring in Stephen May, who hasn't played every game, but when he has played, I don't think there's a single supporter that wouldn't say this is exactly what we need at fullback.
This club hasn't had a lot of success. Did the club as a club get ahead of itself after the prelim?
No, I would say completely the opposite. What I read from the media was that we were the number one list and we were going to win the premiership. I don't know if we were that good. Internally, what I'm hearing from Goody and the coaches and the players were we beat 2 top 8 teams to get into the finals because we had an easier fixture. We didn't dominate last year. We got into the finals and we got 2 teams at a good time and we played magnificently well for those couple of games and we make a preliminary final. But for Goody and the coaches, they were saying we've got to be a 3 to 4 game better team just to make the 8. And that's the conversation internally, which was separate to the public debate about were we the number one and would we play in a grand final.
One of your aims is to re-establish Melbourne as an AFL powerhouse. Winning aside, what stands in the way of that happening? Is there something in the DNA? Because we hear there's some criticism that when things are going bad, Melbourne fans are quiet. They're not noisy. They're not making the sort of sounds that other fans make when things are going wrong. Is there something in the DNA that stops them?
I think what I'm as soon as the position got announced, I spoke to a lot of Melbourne people involved intimately and some from lots of supporters as well, and I understand the historical challenges and I understand some of the scar tissue. I really haven't engaged in a lot of those conversations, not because I don't care, because they actually don't help us where we're going. All my conversations are about what the vision of this club looks like as the best version of itself. Now, we've grown membership during a very tough year by 30%. So we've gone from 44 to 53. That's an extra $1 million. So we've got 53,000. You could add probably another 10 or 12 to that if you took that. In the MCC, we've actually got 12,000 members who are Melbourne supporters in the MCC dressed in their Melbourne gear that aren't ticking the box to be a Melbourne member as well. If that happens, we're fundamentally a different club. We're over the 60,000 members. We're $1 million ahead of where we're at. We're paying down our debt. We're doing all these fundamental things off field, but I've got to say the thing that's going to make us great is on-field performance. It's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 years of performing, making finals, winning a premiership, and actually holding our own and producing a product that has the Melbourne people, like last year, 90,000 of them rolling up to go, that's what I want to be part of, and that's the club we're trying to create.
But I was being mocked when I walked in here because I suggested that today is a danger game for the Pies, and the three people that surround
not
us
me.
mocked me. Well,
Not me.
particularly the hosts, Ange and Limo. It's a big danger game for the Pies, isn't it?
It absolutely is, because we've got a lot of talent, and I'm going to try and talk it up here, Pete. But I'm hoping, you know what? I'm hoping that the players feel like I do, and the supporters, which is this is a mini grand final for us. Like, we win this is a big win. This is an important win at the end of the year. Build some momentum for the end of the season as we go into the program. So I'm hoping that this is an absolute difficult game that makes you uncomfortable all game, and maybe you go home tail between your legs.
We'll call it the Gary Pert Cup today, actually. You've got to sell a bit of hope to your fans, Gary, so you want a good result today. Alan Richardson, Brendan Bolton and Brad Scott, all great names who are out there in the marketplace. I know you're committed to Simon Goodwin. Could there potentially be a role for one of these people on Goody's team?
So we're talking to lots of players and lots of player managers, lots of coaches and coacher managers. We're in a situation which is not ideal, but, the reality is we're not going to be playing in the finals, and it gives us the opportunity to have those conversations. We won't be commentating that all the way through to the process, but one of the things with Brendan McCartney, who had a chat to Goody and said, look, I've been here for 5 years. I wanted to mentor Goody as a coach, which he's done wonderfully well. I want to develop the young players, which, again, if you ask our young players, he's been magnificent. But he went to Goody and he said, you need some new energy and IP, and you just need a shift. And I want to declare that now so that you've got time to talk to other parties. So obviously those conversations are going on. We won't declare all those people and structures until we're ready to lay it out, talk to our members and supporters and go, this is what we're doing and why. But with the combination of Darren Burgess and some of the things that I think are going to roll out, I think it's going to be exciting.
Why no review, Gary? Because these other clubs, Richmond, Collingwood, even St Kilda, after the year you've had?
What you're talking about is an external review.
A big, yep.
Because I think one of the things is you've got footy people involved. We're getting external analysts and football people, including some of the people from the AFL, to give us feedback and give us the insight so we understand where the challenges are, and we're very clear on that. And then part of that is going, these are the people that are going to be the key drivers of that program moving forward. I think the process has been very thorough, and where we're at from an information point of view, like I said, now's not the time to be presenting that, but I can tell you now, at the end of the season, every season, we will be doing a members forum where we articulate, we're accountable to our members. This is what's happened in the year. You need to understand it. Ask whatever questions you want. This is what we're going to be doing moving forward, and that's when that will be presented to our members.
On the SMS, Gary Pert, someone has asked, my mum knitted, Gary, a D's scarf. Her mum, Barbara, she wants me to ask, how is the D's scarf going? The knitted D's scarf
He's
from Barbara.
he's wearing it right now.
No. But even better, I can tell you now, my wife, Andy's sitting in the lunch at the moment with that scarf on.
Oh, beautiful.
That's honestly where she is.
Thank you, Barbara. We are the ABC, Gary, so we have to get to the news bang on 1 o'clock. Thank you for your time on ABC Grandstand. All the best today for the rest of the season and season 2020 as well.